The photograph on the wall showed two people standing on a glacier, their faces bright with joy. Behind them, a mother polar bear walked with her cubs across the ice. The image had won 3 international awards, but Celine could not look at it anymore. She had turned it to face the wall 6 months ago. Celine Martin was 43 years old. For 20 years, she had been a nature photographer and documentary filmmaker. She had traveled to the coldest places on Earth. She had photographed wolves in Siberia, penguins in Antarctica, and Arctic foxes in Greenland. Her documentaries about winter wildlife had been shown on television around the world. People called her the Ice Queen because she was never afraid of the cold or the danger. But that was before the accident, before Marcus died. Now Celine lived in Schneetal, a small village in the Swiss Alps. She worked as a tour guide, showing tourists the pretty streets and old churches. It was simple work, safe work that kept her far from the mountains, even though they stood all around her village, their white peaks touching the sky. Every morning, Celine woke up and made coffee in her small apartment. She lived above a bakery, and the smell of fresh bread came through the floor. She dressed in simple clothes, nothing like the special winter gear she used to wear. She ate breakfast alone, looking out the window at the mountains she used to love. The apartment was small but comfortable. There were no photographs on the walls. Celine had packed all her cameras away in boxes. She kept them in a closet and never opened it. Sometimes, late at night, she would stand in front of that closet door. Her hand would reach for the handle, but she never opened it. "Good morning, Celine," called Frau Weber from the bakery below. Frau Weber was 70 years old, with white hair and kind eyes. She had owned the bakery for 40 years. "Good morning," Celine replied, coming down the stairs. "You look tired again," Frau Weber said, handing her a warm roll. "Bad dreams?" Celine nodded. She had the same dream almost every night. In the dream, she was standing on the ice with Marcus. They were filming a polar bear mother with her cubs. The sun was bright. Everything was beautiful. Then Marcus took a step forward. The ice made a sound like breaking glass. Marcus looked at her, surprise in his eyes. Then he was gone, falling through the ice into the black water below. Celine always woke up at that moment, her heart beating fast, sweat on her face. "You need to talk to someone," Frau Weber said gently. "This pain you carry, it is too heavy for one person." "I'm fine," Celine said, though they both knew it was not true. Celine had moved to Schneetal 8 months ago. After the accident, she could not work anymore. Every time she picked up a camera, she saw Marcus falling. Every time she looked at snow and ice, she felt the cold water that had taken her friend. The production company had been very understanding. They told her to take all the time she needed. But Celine knew she would never go back. Marcus had been her best friend for 15 years. They had met at film school in London when they were young. Marcus was from Norway, tall and blonde, always laughing and full of energy. He loved the cold even more than Celine did. "I have ice in my blood," he would joke. They had made 10 documentaries together. They had survived storms in Iceland, frozen cameras in Alaska, and equipment failures in Russia. They had been a perfect team. Marcus was the sound engineer and assistant cameraman. Celine was the photographer and director. They understood each other without words. The accident happened in Svalbard, a group of islands in the Arctic Ocean. They were making a documentary about polar bears and climate change. They had been filming for 3 weeks. They had already captured amazing footage of bears hunting seals, mothers teaching their cubs to swim, and the beauty of the Arctic landscape. On that last day, the weather was perfect. The sky was clear and blue. The sun made the ice sparkle like diamonds. They had found a bear family, a mother, with 2 cubs. The bears were about 100 meters away, far enough to be safe. Celine and Marcus set up their equipment on what looked like solid ice. They filmed for an hour. The footage was beautiful. The mother bear was teaching her cubs how to find breathing holes where seals come up for air. Celine was so focused on filming that she did not notice the small cracks in the ice around them. "I'm going to move closer," Marcus said. "I want to get better sound of the cubs playing."
Be careful, Celine replied, her eye still on the camera viewfinder. Marcus picked up his sound equipment and walked forward. He took 5 steps. Then the ice broke. It happened so fast. One moment Marcus was there. The next moment he was in the water. The ice had broken into pieces around a large hole. The water in the Arctic Ocean is so cold that it can kill a person in minutes. Celine dropped her camera and ran to the edge of the ice. "Marcus!" she screamed. She could see him in the water, trying to swim to the ice, but his heavy clothes were pulling him down. His face was white with shock and cold. Celine lay down on the ice and reached out her hand. She was trying to spread her weight so the ice would not break more. "Grab my hand," she shouted. Marcus tried to swim to her. He reached out. Their fingers almost touched. But the current under the ice was strong. It pulled Marcus away. He tried to swim again, but his movements were getting slower. The cold was taking his strength. "Celine," he said. His voice was quiet. "I'm sorry." "No!" Celine screamed. "Don't give up! Keep swimming!" She took off her jacket and threw it to him, hoping he could grab it. But Marcus was too far away now. His face was going under the water. Celine watched, helpless, as her best friend drowned in the black Arctic water. The rescue team found his body 3 days later. The ice had carried it 2 kilometers away. At the funeral in Oslo, Marcus's family thanked Celine for being his friend. His mother hugged her and said, "He loved working with you." He died doing what he loved. But Celine could not accept those words. Marcus had died because they had been careless, because she had not checked the ice properly, because she had let him walk on ice that was not safe. It was her fault. She was the director. She was responsible for safety. And she had failed. After the funeral, Celine went back to her apartment in London. She tried to work. The production company had 3 new projects waiting for her. But when she looked at the proposals, all she could see was danger. A documentary about mountain goats? They could fall. A film about wolves? They could attack. A project about winter storms? Someone could freeze to death. Fear lived inside her now, cold and heavy like ice in her stomach. Celine's therapist, Dr. Patel, was a kind woman with a soft voice. "You are experiencing survivor's guilt and post-traumatic stress," she explained. "These feelings are normal after what you experienced. But you cannot let them control your life." "I can't go back to that work," Celine said. "Every time I think about it, I see Marcus dying." "Then perhaps you need a change," Dr. Patel suggested. "Sometimes to heal, we need to step away from the things that hurt us. Not forever. Just until we are ready." That was when Celine decided to leave. She needed to be somewhere quiet, somewhere far from the film industry and memories of Marcus. She needed to be somewhere she could start over. A friend told her about Schneetal. "It's a small village in Switzerland," the friend said. "Very quiet, very beautiful. They always need tour guides in the winter season. Maybe you could work there for a while." Celine looked up the village online. It was in a valley surrounded by mountains. The village itself was pretty, with old wooden houses and narrow streets. It looked peaceful. It looked safe. She applied for the tour guide position and got the job. 2 weeks later, she packed her life into boxes, put them in storage, and took a train to Switzerland. Schneetal welcomed her quietly. The village had only 800 people. Everyone knew everyone. In the beginning, people were curious about the new tour guide. Where was she from? Why had she come to their small village? But Celine did not share her story. She just smiled and said she wanted a quiet life. The work was easy. Celine gave tours 3 times a week. She showed tourists the old church that was 300 years old. She took them to the cheese factory where they made traditional Swiss cheese. She walked them through the village streets and told them about the history and traditions. The tourists took photographs and asked simple questions. No one's life was in danger. Everything was safe. But Celine could not escape the mountains. They were everywhere, surrounding the village like giant walls. From her apartment window, she could see the peak called Winterhorn. It was the highest mountain in the region, with a summit at 3,800 meters. In winter, its face was covered in snow and ice. It looked beautiful. It looked deadly. The village people loved their mountains. They went skiing every weekend. They talked about the different routes and trails. They shared stories about climbing adventures. But when they invited Celine to join them, she always said no. "You don't like skiing?" asked Thomas, who ran the village sports shop. "I used to," Celine said, "but not anymore." "That's too bad," Thomas said. "The mountains are beautiful this time of year." Celine just smiled and changed the subject. At night, when the village was quiet, Celine sometimes walked through the streets. She liked the silence. She liked being alone. On clear nights, she could see millions of stars above the mountains. The same stars she used to photograph in the Arctic. One night, she walked past the village rescue station. Through the window, she could see people inside, studying maps and checking equipment. These were the mountain rescue volunteers. They saved people who got lost or injured in the mountains. Celine watched them for a moment, then walked away. She did not want to think about rescue. She did not want to remember how she could not save Marcus. Months passed. Summer ended and autumn came. The tourists changed from summer hikers to autumn leaf watchers. Celine learned the names of everyone in the village. She went to the weekly market. She bought cheese from Hans and bread from Frau Weber. She became part of the village rhythm. But inside, she was still frozen, still stuck in that moment on the ice, still watching Marcus disappear into black water. "You seem far away," Frau Weber said one morning in October. "Your body is here, but your mind is somewhere else." "I'm sorry," Celine said. "I was just thinking." "About the past?" Frau Weber asked gently. Celine nodded. "The past is important," Frau Weber said. "We should remember it. But we cannot live there forever. Life is happening now, today. If we are always looking back, we miss the beautiful things in front of us." Celine knew Frau Weber was right, but knowing something and being able to do it were two different things. November came, and with it, the first snow. Celine woke up one morning to find the village covered in white. The mountains had even more snow, thick and heavy on every slope. The winter season was beginning. The village changed in winter. More tourists came for skiing and snowboarding. The restaurants were busier. The shops sold winter equipment. And the mountains, those beautiful and dangerous mountains, called to people from all over the world. Celine's tour schedule increased. Now she worked 5 days a week instead of 3. The tourists wanted to hear about winter traditions. They wanted to know about avalanches and mountain safety. They asked her if she had ever climbed the mountains. "No," Celine always said. "I just work in the village." One tourist, a woman from Germany, looked surprised. "But you live surrounded by the most beautiful mountains in Europe. You must have climbed them." "I prefer to admire them from down here," Celine replied, keeping her voice light and friendly. But inside, her heart hurt. She missed the mountains. She missed the feel of snow under her boots. She missed the silence of high places. She missed the work she used to love. But she was too afraid to go back. In her apartment at night, Celine sometimes opened her laptop and looked at her old photographs. Pictures of glaciers in Greenland, Images of the northern lights dancing over frozen lakes, videos of Arctic foxes playing in the snow. Each image was beautiful. Each image hurt to look at. She had been so brave once, so confident. She had faced storms and cold and dangerous animals without fear. But one accident, one terrible moment, had taken all that away. Dr. Patel had told her before she left London, "Healing takes time. Be patient with yourself. When you are ready, you will know." But Celine did not feel ready. She did not know if she would ever be ready. The weeks passed. The snow got deeper. The tourists came and went. Celine gave her tours, went home, ate dinner alone, and went to sleep. Every day was the same: safe, quiet, empty. Then, on a cold afternoon in late November, everything changed. The day started normally. Celine woke up at 7 o'clock, made her coffee, and looked out the window. The sky was gray and heavy with clouds. Snow was falling, soft and steady. The weather forecast had predicted a storm, but storms were normal in the mountains in November. Celine dressed in warm clothes and went downstairs to the bakery. Frau Weber was already awake, pulling fresh bread from the oven. "Big storm coming," Frau Weber said. "The weather service says it will be the worst storm of the season. Maybe you should stay inside today." "I have 2 tours scheduled," Celine said. "The 10 o'clock and the 2 o'clock. "The tourists might not come in this weather," Frau Weber suggested. But the tourists did come. The morning group was small, just 4 people from Italy. They wanted to see the village, even in the snow. Celine took them to the church and the cheese factory. They took photographs and smiled, enjoying the winter atmosphere. The tour ended at noon. The afternoon tour was canceled. The family who had booked it called to say they preferred to stay at their hotel because of the snow. Celine was relieved. The snow was getting heavier. The wind was picking up. She wanted to go home and stay warm. She was walking back to her apartment when she heard voices from the village rescue station. The door was open. Inside, she could see several people gathered around a table, looking at a map. They looked worried. Celine was about to walk past when someone called her name. "Celine! Come here for a moment." It was Thomas from the sports shop. He was one of the rescue volunteers. He waved her over. Celine walked to the door. "What's wrong?" "We have a problem," Thomas said. His face was serious. "A group of tourists went up to the mountain shelter this morning. 6 people. They were supposed to come back down this afternoon, but they never came back. And now the storm is getting worse." The mountain shelter was a small building high on Winterhorn Mountain. It was at 2,500 meters, about 3 hours' walk from the village in good weather. Many tourists hiked up to see the view and then came back down the same day. "Maybe they decided to stay the night at the shelter," Celine suggested. "It's safer than walking down in a storm." "Maybe," Thomas said. But they did not tell anyone. And they did not take enough food or sleeping bags for an overnight stay. The hotel manager is very worried. He called us an hour ago. Peter, the head of the rescue team, joined them at the door. He was 50 years old, with a weather-worn face and calm eyes. He had been leading mountain rescues for 25 years. "We need to make a decision," Peter said. "Normally, we would go up now to check on them. But look at this weather." He pointed at the falling snow. "Visibility is almost 0. The wind is getting stronger every hour. The weather service says the storm will last all night, maybe longer." "So what will you do?" Celine asked. "We wait," Peter said. "We have no choice. It's too dangerous to go up now. If we send people, they might get lost too. We will wait for the storm to pass. Then, first thing in the morning, we go." "But what about the tourists?" Celine asked. What if they try to come down in this storm? Peter's face was troubled. We have to hope they are smart enough to stay in the shelter. The shelter has some emergency supplies, blankets, a little food, a heating stove. If they stay there, they will be cold and hungry, but they will survive the night. And if they don't stay? Celine asked. If they panic and try to come down? Peter looked out at the snow. Then God help them. In this storm on that mountain, they would not survive. Celine felt something cold move through her body. Not fear, something else. Something that felt almost like an old memory. Who are they? She asked. The tourists. Thomas checked his notes. 2 couples from England, a young woman from France, and an older man from America. They are staying at the Berg Hotel. They told the manager they wanted to hike to the mountain shelter to see the view. The manager warned them about the storm forecast, but they said they would be back before afternoon. What time did they leave? Celine asked. 8 o'clock this morning, Thomas said. It's 4 o'clock now. They have been gone 8 hours. Celine looked out at the mountain. She could barely see it through the falling snow. The wind was making a howling sound. She thought about 6 people on that mountain. Maybe cold, maybe lost, maybe scared. She thought about Marcus. Thank you for the information, she said to Thomas and Peter. Then she turned and walked back to her apartment. But she could not forget about the tourists. All evening, as the storm grew worse, she thought about them. She imagined them in the shelter, cold and worried. She imagined them trying to walk down the mountain in the dark and snow, unable to see, unable to find the path. She made dinner but could not eat. She tried to read but could not focus. She stood at her window, watching the snow fall and the wind blow. The storm was getting worse every hour. The weather forecast on her phone said the snow would continue all night. Wind speeds were now 70 kilometers per hour, with gusts up to 100. At 9 o'clock, Celine's phone rang. It was Thomas. Celine, we have bad news, he said. His voice was tight with worry. The tourists at the mountain shelter, they tried to call for help. One of them had a satellite phone. They said they are very cold. The heating stove is not working properly. They did not bring enough warm clothes. They want to know when we can come get them. What did you tell them? Celine asked. Peter talked to them. He told them to stay in the shelter, to stay together for warmth, to not try to come down. He told them we will come first thing in the morning when the storm passes. Will they be okay until morning? Celine asked. There was a pause. Honestly? We don't know. If they stay in the shelter and keep moving to stay warm, they should be okay. But hypothermia can happen quickly at that altitude in this cold. And if they panic and try to walk down... Thomas did not finish the sentence. I understand, Celine said quietly. After the call ended, Celine sat in her dark apartment. Outside, the storm raged. She thought about 6 people on a cold mountain, waiting for help. She thought about morning, which was still 10 hours away. She thought about Marcus, and how she could not save him. She thought about the promise she had made to herself after his death. Never again would she put herself in danger in the mountains. But 6 people were in danger now, and by morning, it might be too late. Celine stood up and walked to her closet, the closet where she kept all her old equipment. She opened the door for the first time in 8 months. Inside were boxes of camera equipment, her old winter clothes, her climbing gear, everything she had used in her old life, everything she had left behind. She pulled out a box and opened it. Inside were her winter boots, still solid and strong, her thick winter jacket with its many pockets, her special gloves that kept hands warm even in Arctic cold, her headlamp, her compass, her thermal underwear. Celine sat on the floor, surrounded by these things from her past. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was beating fast. She felt afraid. But she also felt something else. Something she had not felt in 8 months. She felt that these people needed help. She felt that maybe, just maybe, she was the person who could help them. Peter had said the rescue team would go in the morning. But morning might be too late. The tourists were cold now. Hypothermia could kill them during the night. And the storm might last longer than one night. The weather service had been wrong before. Celine knew these mountains, not the specific trails, but mountains like them. She had worked in winter conditions worse than this. She had navigated through storms in the Arctic where visibility was 0 and temperatures were minus 40 degrees. She had the skills. She had the experience. She also knew this was crazy. Going up a mountain in a storm at night, alone. Everything about it was dangerous. Peter was right to wait until morning. The safe choice, the smart choice, was to wait. But Celine kept thinking about those 6 people. She kept thinking about them getting colder and colder as the night went on. She kept thinking about them panicking and trying to walk down in the dark. She kept thinking about finding their bodies in the snow in the morning, like Marcus's body in the ice. At 10 o'clock, Celine made her decision. She began to get ready.
She dressed in layers: thermal underwear, fleece, waterproof jacket and pants. She put on 2 pairs of socks and her winter boots. She filled a backpack with supplies: a thermos of hot tea, energy bars, a first aid kit, emergency blankets, extra gloves, a rope, and a flashlight with extra batteries. She put on her headlamp and tested it. The light was strong and bright. She took her compass and a paper map of the mountain trails. She had studied these maps when she first moved to the village, even though she had told herself she would never use them. She looked at the map now, tracing the path to the mountain shelter with her finger. It was a clear trail in summer, but in a storm, at night, everything would look different. She put on her backpack and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked like the old Celine, the Celine who was not afraid, the Celine who went into dangerous places to capture beauty and truth. That Celine had died with Marcus. But maybe, just for tonight, she could come back. Before she left, Celine wrote a note. She put it on her table where someone would find it. The note said, "Gone to mountain shelter to help tourists. If I don't come back, I'm sorry. Please tell my family I love them. Celine." Then she walked out into the storm. The wind hit her like a wall. It was so strong she almost fell backward. Snow was falling so thick she could barely see 5 meters ahead. The temperature was minus 15 degrees, but the wind made it feel much colder. This was not a normal storm. This was a dangerous storm. Celine pulled her hood tight and started walking. The village streets were empty. Everyone was inside, warm and safe. Her boots made crunching sounds in the deep snow. The wind howled around the buildings. She walked through the village and onto the trail that led up the mountain. Almost immediately, everything changed. In the village, there were buildings to block some wind. On the mountain trail, there was nothing. The wind pushed her from side to side. The snow came at her horizontally, stinging her face. Celine turned on her headlamp. The light showed her a world of white. Snow covered everything. The trail markers were buried, but Celine had her compass and her map. She knew the trail went northeast for the first hour. She checked her compass and started walking. Walking in the deep snow was hard work. Each step required effort. The snow was up to her knees in some places. The wind kept trying to push her off balance, but Celine kept going, one step at a time. She thought about Marcus. She thought about the night of the accident, how she had wanted to jump into the water after him, how the other team members had held her back, knowing the cold water would kill her too. How she had screamed and cried while Marcus disappeared under the ice. "I couldn't save you," she whispered into the wind. but maybe I can save them. After an hour of walking, Celine reached the first landmark, a large boulder that marked the turn in the trail. In summer, the trail turned east here and became steeper, but now, in the dark and snow, she could barely see the boulder. She found it by almost walking into it. She stopped to rest for a moment, using the boulder to block some wind. She drank water from her thermos. Her body was warm from the effort of walking, but her face was very cold. Ice was forming on her eyelashes and on the edges of her hood. She checked her phone. No signal. She was already too high on the mountain. She was completely alone now. If something went wrong, no one would know. No one could help her. Celine felt fear rising in her chest. This was crazy. She should turn back. She should go home and wait for morning with the rescue team. But then she thought about the 6 tourists in the shelter. They were waiting for help. They were counting on someone to come. And morning was still 9 hours away. She put away her thermos and kept walking. The trail got steeper. Celine had to use her hands sometimes to climb over rocks and through deep snow. The wind was even stronger now. Several times, a gust almost knocked her down. She had to stop and crouch low until the wind passed. Time became strange. Celine did not know if she had been walking for 1 hour or 3 hours. Everything was the same. Snow, wind, darkness, cold. Her world shrank to the small circle of light from her headlamp. She followed her compass, trusting it to lead her in the right direction. She thought about her old life, the documentaries she had made, the beautiful places she had seen, the awards she had won. All of that seemed so far away now, like a different person's life. She thought about Marcus's last words. "I'm sorry." Why had he apologized? He had nothing to be sorry for. The accident was not his fault. It was no one's fault. It was just bad luck. Thin ice. Wrong place, wrong moment. But Celine had carried the guilt for 8 months. She'd blamed herself. She had let the guilt freeze her heart, stop her life, cage her spirit. Maybe tonight, in this storm, she could break free. After what felt like forever, Celine saw something ahead, a shape in the snow. She got closer. It was one of the trail markers, a red metal sign, half buried in snow, but still visible. The sign showed an arrow pointing up the mountain. Under the arrow it said, "Mountain Shelter, 1.5 kilometers. Only 1.5 kilometers more." Celine felt a surge of energy. She was close. She could make it. But the next section of trail was the hardest. The path went along the side of the mountain here, with a steep drop on one side. In good weather with clear visibility, it was easy to follow. But now, in the dark and storm, Celine had to be very careful. One wrong step could send her falling down the mountain. She moved slowly, testing each step before putting her weight down. The wind pushed her toward the edge. She kept as close to the mountain wall as possible. Her legs were tired, her face was numb with cold, but she kept going. Suddenly her foot slipped. Celine fell forward into the snow, her arms stretched out. For a terrifying moment, she slid toward the edge. Then her hand caught on something. A rock, a root. She did not know. She held on and stopped sliding. She lay in the snow, her heart pounding, her breath coming in gasps. That was close. Too close. Celine carefully pulled herself back up. She checked her body. Nothing was hurt. Nothing was broken. She had been lucky. She kept going, even more carefully now. Finally, after more careful walking, the trail widened again. The dangerous section was behind her. Celine checked her compass and her map. According to her calculations, the shelter should be very close now. Maybe 500 meters. She pushed forward through the snow. The wind was screaming now, louder than before. Snow was everywhere, in her eyes, in her nose, making it hard to breathe. But Celine did not stop. She could not stop now. She was so close. Then, through the snow, she saw a shape. A dark shape that was not a rock or a tree. It was square. It was the shelter. Celine felt tears on her frozen cheeks. She had made it. Against all the danger, against all the fear, she had made it. She stumbled the last 100 meters to the shelter door. It was a simple wooden building, built strong to withstand mountain weather. She reached the door and knocked hard. "Hello," she shouted. "Is anyone there?" For a moment, there was no answer. Celine's heart sank. What if they had left? What if they had tried to go down the mountain and were now lost somewhere in the storm? Then she heard a voice from inside. "Who's there?" "My name is Celine. I'm from Schneetal village. I've come to help you." The door opened. Light spilled out. Celine saw faces staring at her in amazement. 6 faces exactly as Thomas had said. They looked cold, tired, and very surprised. You came up the mountain?" a man with an American accent asked. "In this storm?" "Yes," Celine said, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. "Yes, I did." Part 3. The Shelter. The shelter was small inside, just one room with wooden benches along the walls. There was a stove in the corner, but it was giving off almost no heat. The 6 tourists were huddled together, wrapped in their jackets and coats. Their lips were blue with cold. They were shivering. Celine quickly assessed the situation. The shelter had kept them safe from the wind, but it was still very cold inside. She could see her breath in the air. The tourists had been sitting here for hours, getting colder and colder. Some of them looked like they might have early hypothermia. "Everyone stay sitting," Celine said, taking off her backpack. "I need to check each of you. Who has been here the longest? Who came up first this morning?" A woman with a British accent raised her hand. "We all came together. We got here around 11 o'clock. We were going to have lunch and then go back down. But the storm came so fast, we decided to wait it out. But it just keeps getting worse, and we're so cold." "You made the right decision to stay here," Celine said. She pulled out her emergency blankets from her backpack. "These blankets will help. They are special material that reflects body heat." She distributed the emergency blankets to the tourists. They wrapped themselves gratefully. Then Celine pulled out her thermos. "This is hot tea," she said. "Everyone takes 2 sips. Not more. We need to share it." The tourists passed around the thermos, drinking the warm tea. Celine could see the relief on their faces. The warmth helped. "What's wrong with the stove?" Celine asked, pointing to the old heating stove in the corner. "We don't know," said a young French woman. Her teeth were chattering. "We found some wood and we tried to light it, but the smoke just comes back into the room. We had to open the door. It made everything even colder." Celine went to examine the stove. She shone her headlamp up the chimney pipe. She could see the problem immediately. Snow had blocked the chimney from outside. The smoke had nowhere to go. "I need to go outside and clear the chimney," Celine said. "Once the stove is working, you'll warm up quickly." "You can't go back outside," said one of the British men. "The storm is too dangerous." "I'll be right outside the building," Celine said. "I won't go far. But we need heat, or we won't survive the night." She put her backpack back on and went to the door. Before she opened it, she turned back to the tourists. "Stay together. Keep moving your fingers and toes. Talk to each other. Don't let anyone fall asleep. If someone seems confused or stops making sense when they talk, that's a sign of serious hypothermia. Tell me immediately when I come back." Then she opened the door and stepped back into the storm. The wind almost knocked her down. She had forgotten how strong it was. Inside the shelter, protected from the wind, the storm had seemed less terrible. But out here, it was like being in a war. Celine made her way around the side of the building, holding onto the wall so she would not get lost. The snow was even deeper now, coming up to her thighs. The shelter chimney was on the back wall. She could barely see it through the snow. She reached the chimney and looked up. Yes, just as she thought. Snow had piled up on top, blocking it completely. Celine found a long stick near the shelter wall. She used it to push the snow off the top of the chimney. The snow fell down around her. Some of it went down inside her jacket, making her gasp with the cold. But she kept working. She pushed and pushed until the chimney was clear. Then she made her way back to the door and went inside. The tourists looked at her with hope in their eyes. "The chimney is clear," Celine said, brushing snow off her clothes. "Let's try the stove again." They put wood in the stove and lit it. This time, the smoke went up the chimney properly. Within minutes, warmth began to fill the small room. The tourists held their hands near the stove, grateful for the heat. Celine checked each person carefully. She looked at their skin color, checked their fingers and toes, asked them questions to make sure they were thinking clearly. Most of them had mild hypothermia. They were cold and tired, but they would be okay. But the young French woman, whose name was Marie, was in worse condition. Her lips were very blue. Her hands were so cold they were almost white. She was shivering violently. "Marie needs extra attention," Celine said to the group. "Everyone, take turns sitting next to her. Share your body heat. Keep her warm." The other tourists immediately moved closer to Marie, wrapping her in their emergency blankets along with their jackets. Now that the immediate danger was past, Celine could think about what to do next. They could not stay here forever. The shelter had a little emergency food, some old crackers and cans of soup, but not enough for 6 people for long. And while the stove was now working, it would not keep them warm if the storm lasted several days. They needed to get down the mountain. But when? Celine checked her phone. Still no signal. She looked at her watch. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. She had been climbing for 3 hours. The storm showed no signs of stopping. "Why did you come?" asked the American man. His name was Robert, and he was about 60 years old. "The rescue team told us on the satellite phone to wait until morning. They said it was too dangerous to come up tonight." "It was," Celine admitted. "It still is. But I was worried about you. I thought you might not survive until morning." "We're lucky you came," said one of the British women, whose name was Sarah. "We were getting so cold. I don't think we could have lasted all night." Celine did not tell them about Marcus. She did not tell them about her fear. She did not tell them that this was the first time she had been on a mountain since the accident. She just smiled and said, "I'm glad I could help." But inside, Celine was thinking hard. She had made it up the mountain. But getting 6 tired, cold people down the mountain in this storm would be much harder, maybe impossible. She thought about Peter and the rescue team. They would start up the mountain at first light. That was probably around 7 o'clock. It was now 1 o'clock. 6 more hours. Could they wait 6 more hours? Celine looked at the tourists. They were warming up now. The heat from the stove was helping. They had emergency blankets. They had a little food. If they stayed here and kept the stove going, they would probably be okay until morning. But what if the storm got worse? What if more snow blocked the chimney again? What if the wood ran out? And there was another problem. Marie, the French woman, was very sick. Even with the warmth and the blankets, she was not getting better. Her shivering was getting worse, not better. That was a bad sign. It meant her body was losing the ability to warm itself. She needed medical attention soon. Celine made a decision. "Listen, everyone," she said. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to wait here until the storm gets a little better. I'm going to go outside every hour to check the weather. When I think it's safe enough, we're going to walk down to the village together, slowly and carefully. But Marie is very sick. She needs a doctor soon. We can't wait until morning." "But the rescue team is coming in the morning," said Robert. "Shouldn't we just wait for them?" "If the storm continues like this, The rescue team might not be able to come even in the morning, Celine explained. And Marie might not have until morning. I think our best chance is to go down ourselves, when the storm gets a little lighter. The tourists looked scared, but they nodded. They trusted her. This stranger who had come up a mountain in a storm to save them. Celine spent the next hour organizing everything. She divided the remaining hot tea among the tourists. She gave everyone energy bars from her backpack. She found rope in the shelter's emergency supplies and cut it into lengths. When they walked down, they would tie themselves together. That way, if someone fell or got lost in the snow, the others could help. Every hour, Celine went outside to check the weather. At 2 o'clock, the storm was still raging. At 3 o'clock, it was the same. But at 4 o'clock, she noticed a change. The wind was a little less strong. The snow was still falling heavily, but not quite as thickly as before. At 5 o'clock, Celine made her decision. "It's time," she said. "We're going down now." The tourists looked at her with a mixture of relief and fear. Going outside meant facing the storm again, but staying meant more cold, more waiting, more danger for Marie. "Everyone, listen carefully," Celine said. Her voice was calm and clear. "We are going to walk in a line. I will be in front. Robert, you will be in the back. Everyone else in the middle, with Marie in the center where we can help her. We will tie ourselves together with rope, about 3 meters apart. If someone falls, don't panic. The rope will hold them. We all stop and help them get up. Clear?" Everyone nodded. We walk slowly. We stay together. We do not hurry. Hurrying causes mistakes. Mistakes on a mountain can kill you. Slow and steady, that's how we survive. Understood? Understood, they said together. Celine tied the rope around her waist. Then she tied the other end to Sarah, one of the British women. Sarah was tied to her husband David. David was tied to Marie. Marie was tied to Emma, the other British woman. Emma was tied to Robert at the back. They were now a chain of 7 people. "Before we go, I need to tell you something," Celine said. "This will be hard. This will be scary, but we can do it. I have walked in worse storms than this. I know what I'm doing. Trust me, and we will all get down safely." The tourists looked at her. In their eyes, she saw fear, but also hope. They believed her. Celine opened the door. The storm rushed in, cold and angry. But it was less violent than before. The wind was still strong, but not impossible. The snow was still falling, but she could see about 10 meters now instead of 5. "Let's go," she said. They walked out into the storm, 7 people tied together, walking into the darkness and cold. Part 4. The Descent. The first hour of descent was the hardest. The tourists were tired and cold, even after resting in the shelter. Marie, in particular, was very weak. She kept stumbling, and the others had to hold her up, but they kept moving, step by step. Celine walked in front, using her compass and her knowledge of the mountain to find the trail. The snow had covered many of the landmarks, but she found them by feel and intuition. A shape that was the right size for a boulder. A slope that matched her memory of the map. The tourists were quiet. They saved their energy for walking. The only sounds were their breathing, the crunch of boots in snow, and the endless howl of the wind. After 45 minutes, they reached the dangerous section of trail, the part with the steep drop on one side. Celine remembered how she had almost fallen here on the way up. With 6 tired tourists tied to her, the danger was much greater. She stopped the group. "Everyone, listen," she shouted over the wind. "This next part is dangerous. There is a cliff edge on the left side. Stay close to the mountain wall on the right. Walk very carefully. If you feel yourself slipping, sit down immediately. Don't try to stay standing. Sit down and call out. We will all stop and help you. Understood?" "Understood," they shouted back. Celine went first, testing each step. The rope stretched behind her. She could feel the weight of 6 people depending on her. One mistake and they could all fall. She moved like a mountain goat, careful and sure. Her old skills came back to her. Skills she had learned in Norway and Iceland and Greenland. Skills she thought she had lost forever. Behind her, the tourists followed. They moved slowly, carefully. At one point, Emma slipped and fell. But she did exactly as Celine had told her. She sat down and called out. Everyone stopped. David and Robert helped her back to her feet. Then they continued. After 30 terrifying minutes, they cleared the dangerous section. Celine felt relief wash over her. The hardest part was behind them. From here, the trail was easier. But Marie was getting worse. Even with 2 people helping her, she could barely walk. Her words were confused. She kept saying she wanted to sleep. Don't let her sleep, Celine told the others. Keep talking to her. Keep her awake. Sarah walked beside Marie, talking to her constantly. Tell me about Paris, Sarah said. I've always wanted to visit Paris. What's your favorite place there? Marie answered in a slow, confused voice. But she stayed awake. They walked for another hour. Celine's legs were burning with fatigue. Her face was so cold she could not feel it anymore. But she kept going. She thought about Marcus. She thought about how he would be proud of her now. She thought about how, maybe, she was finally forgiving herself. At 6:30 in the morning, the darkness began to lift. Dawn was coming. The storm was still strong, but the snow was falling less heavily. Visibility improved to 20 meters, then 30, and then Celine saw lights ahead, lights moving up the mountain toward them. Look! She shouted to the others. Lights! It's the rescue team. The tourists looked up. Hope filled their tired faces. They had made it. They were going to survive. The lights came closer. Celine could see people now, people in red rescue jackets, carrying medical equipment and supplies. She recognized Peter at the front of the group. Peter reached them, his face showing amazement. Celine? You brought them down? By yourself? They needed help, Celine said simply. I couldn't wait. Peter looked at the group of tourists, all still tied together with rope, all exhausted but alive. He looked back at Celine. You shouldn't have gone up alone, but I'm glad you did. The rescue team quickly took over. They examined each tourist, especially Marie. They put Marie on a stretcher. They gave everyone warm drinks and medical attention. We need to get them down quickly, Peter said to Celine. Marie is in bad condition. We called a helicopter, but it can't fly until the storm fully clears. Can you help us get them down faster? You know the trail now. Of course, Celine said. Together, Celine and the rescue team helped the tourists down the mountain. With more people to help, the going was much faster. They reached the village just after 8 o'clock in the morning. An ambulance was waiting. The paramedics immediately started treating the tourists. Marie was taken to the hospital in the nearby town. The others were checked and given warm blankets and hot food. The tourists wanted to thank Celine, but she was too tired. She just smiled and said, "Rest now. We can talk later." Celine walked back to her apartment. Her legs felt like they were made of stone. Her body ached everywhere. But her heart felt different, lighter, freer. She climbed the stairs to her apartment. Frau Weber was waiting at the top, her eyes wide with worry and relief. "Celine, thank God you're safe. When I found your note this morning, I thought my heart would stop. Why did you do such a dangerous thing?" "Someone had to," Celine said. "And I was the only one who could." Frau Weber hugged her tightly. "You are either the bravest or the craziest person I have ever met." "Maybe both," Celine said with a tired smile. She went into her apartment and looked around. It looked the same, but everything had changed. She had changed. Celine walked to the photograph on the wall, the one of her and Marcus on the glacier, the one she had turned to face the wall 8 months ago. She picked it up and turned it around. She looked at Marcus's face, smiling and full of life. "I did it," she whispered to the photograph. "I saved them. I went up the mountain and I brought them down. I was so scared. But I did it anyway." Tears ran down her cold cheeks. "I couldn't save you, Marcus. And I'm so sorry. I will always be sorry. But maybe I can forgive myself now. Maybe I can start to heal." She placed the photograph back on the wall, facing out this time. Then she took off her wet clothes and climbed into bed. Within seconds, she was asleep. Celine slept for 14 hours. When she woke up, it was evening. The storm had passed. Outside her window, the sky was clear and full of stars. The mountains stood silent and beautiful, covered in fresh snow. Her phone was full of messages, from the rescue team, from the tourists' families, from people in the village, from friends in England who had somehow heard the news. Everyone wanted to thank her. Everyone wanted to know if she was okay. But Celine did not answer the messages yet. She was too tired. She made some tea and stood at her window, looking at the mountains. They did not look scary anymore. They looked like old friends. Friends she had been avoiding. Friends who had been waiting patiently for her to return. The next morning, Celine woke early. She felt stiff and sore, but good. She went downstairs to the bakery. Frau Weber saw her and immediately came over with a plate of pastries. "How do you feel?" "Like I was hit by a truck," Celine said with a smile. "But also, good. Really good." "The whole village is talking about you," Frau Weber said. "Thomas from the rescue team says you did an impossible thing. Walking up that mountain in that storm, bringing down 6 people. He says even experienced mountain guides would not have tried it." "I had experience," Celine said. "I worked in winter conditions for many years. I knew what to do." "But why did you never tell anyone?" Frau Weber asked. "Why did you let us think you were just an ordinary tour guide?" Celine was quiet for a moment. "I was running away from my past. From a terrible thing that happened. From guilt and fear. I thought if I hid who I was, I could escape the pain. But it doesn't work that way. The pain follows you wherever you go. And now?" Frau Weber asked gently. "Now, I think I'm ready to stop running," Celine said. Later that day, Peter from the rescue team came to visit. "I wanted to thank you properly," he said. "What you did was extraordinary, but also very foolish. You could have died up there." "I know," Celine said. "Believe me, I know. But I also knew that those people needed help right away. Sometimes you have to take risks to save lives." Peter nodded. "You're right. And you have real skills, Celine. The way you brought them down. The way you organized everything. The way you kept them calm. You've done this kind of work before, haven't you?" Celine told Peter about her past. About her years as a nature photographer and documentary filmmaker. About working in the Arctic and other cold places. About Marcus and the accident. About the guilt she had carried for 8 months.
Peter listened without interrupting. When Celine finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I understand why you ran away. What happened to your friend was terrible. But Celine, it was not your fault. Accidents happen in nature. We work in dangerous places. We do our best to be safe, but we cannot control everything." "I know that in my head," Celine said, "but my heart took longer to understand." "The rescue team could use someone with your skills," Peter said. "We have good people, but no one with your level of experience in extreme winter conditions. Would you consider joining us? As a volunteer, of course, when you're ready." Celine thought about it. The rescue team, helping people, going back to the mountains. It scared her, but it also felt right. "I need time," she said, "to think about it, to make sure I'm really ready." "Take all the time you need," Peter said. The mountains will be here when you're ready to come back to them. Over the next few days, the tourists came to visit Celine one by one. Sarah and David brought her flowers and chocolates. Emma wrote her a long thank you card. Robert called her a hero. The young French woman, Marie, came last. She had spent 2 days in the hospital but was now recovering. "You saved my life," Marie said, tears in her eyes. "The doctors said I had severe hypothermia. If we had stayed in the shelter until morning, I might have died." "I'm just glad you're okay," Celine said. "Why did you risk your life for us?" Marie asked. "You didn't know us? We were just strangers." Celine thought about the question. "Because I couldn't save my friend," she said finally. "A year ago, someone I loved died in an accident. I tried to save him, but I couldn't. Ever since then, I've been paralyzed by guilt and fear. But when I heard about you on the mountain, something inside me woke up. I realized that maybe I couldn't save Marcus, but I could save you. And maybe by saving you, I could start to save myself." Marie hugged her. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving me my life back." After Marie left, Celine sat alone in her apartment. She thought about everything that had happened. The storm, the rescue, the tourists, the mountains. She thought about Marcus. For 8 months, she had been frozen in the moment of his death. Unable to move forward, unable to forgive herself, unable to live. But something had changed during that night on the mountain. When she made the decision to go up into the storm. When she felt fear but went anyway. When she brought those 6 people down safely. She had discovered something important. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is being afraid and doing what needs to be done anyway. Celine stood up and walked to her closet. She opened it and looked at all her old equipment. Her cameras, her filming gear, everything she had packed away and tried to forget. She pulled out one of the cameras. It was her favorite, a professional camera that had been with her to the Arctic, to Siberia, to Antarctica. She turned it on. The battery was dead, but it did not matter. Holding the camera in her hands felt good. It felt right. Maybe someday she would use these cameras again. Maybe not. But she did not have to decide that now. For now, it was enough to know that she could. That the possibility was there. That she was no longer frozen. A week after the rescue, the village held a small celebration in Celine's honor. The mayor gave a speech about bravery and heroism. The tourists were all there, recovered and healthy. They told their story to the gathered villagers, about the storm and the cold and the rescue. Celine felt embarrassed by all the attention. She was not comfortable being called a hero. She had just done what needed to be done. But when she looked around at the smiling faces, at the tourists who were alive because of her decision, at Peter and the rescue team nodding with respect, at Frau Weber with tears of pride in her eyes, Celine felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt proud of herself. After the celebration, Celine walked home through the village streets. The night was clear and cold. Stars filled the sky. The mountains rose all around, peaceful and eternal. Celine stopped and looked up at Winterhorn, the mountain she had climbed in the storm. Its peak glowed silver in the moonlight. It looked beautiful. It looked like home. She thought about Peter's offer to join the rescue team. She thought about going back to the mountains, not as a filmmaker this time, not to capture images, but to help people, to save lives, to use her skills for something good. It felt right, scary, but right. Celine made a decision. Tomorrow, she would talk to Peter. She would tell him yes. She would join the rescue team. She would train with them. And when she was ready, she would go back to the mountains, not to run away from her past, but to embrace her future. When Celine got home, She did something she had not done in 8 months. She sat down at her computer and opened her email. She found the email address for Marcus's mother in Norway. She wrote, "Dear Ingrid, I'm sorry I haven't written before. I was not ready. But I need to tell you something. I finally understand that Marcus's death was not my fault. It was a terrible accident. I will always miss him. I will always love him. But I cannot let guilt freeze my life forever." Marcus would not want that. He would want me to keep living, keep growing, keep helping others. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to honor his memory by being brave, the way he was brave, by loving life the way he loved life. I hope you can understand. With love, Celine. She pressed send before she could change her mind. Then Celine opened a new document on her computer. She started writing. Not a script for a documentary, just words. Her story. The story of what happened on the mountain. The story of Marcus. The story of fear and guilt and grief. The story of finding courage again. She wrote for hours. The words poured out of her like a river that had been frozen but was now flowing again. She wrote about the accident. She wrote about moving to Schneetal. She wrote about the storm and the rescue. She wrote about healing. When she finally stopped, the sun was coming up. Celine saved the document. Maybe someday she would do something with these words. Maybe not. But writing them had helped. It had helped her understand her journey. It had helped her see how far she had come. Celine stood up and stretched. She was tired, but it was a good tired. The tired that comes from hard work, from honest emotion, from healing. She walked to her window and looked out at the mountains. The sun was painting them gold and pink. A new day was beginning. A new life was beginning. 2 months later, Celine was a full member of the village rescue team. She had completed the training. She had learned the specific trails and danger points of the local mountains. She had practiced rope techniques and first aid and navigation. Peter was impressed with her skills. "You're a natural," he said. "Some people train for years and never develop the mountain sense you have. You just know things. You can read the weather, read the terrain, make good decisions under pressure." "I had good teachers," Celine said, "and a lot of experience." The first few times going out on rescue calls were hard for Celine. Her heart would race. Her hands would shake. The memories of Marcus would come rushing back. But she pushed through the fear. She focused on the task, on the people who needed help, on doing her job well. And each time it got a little easier. The rescue team was called out about once a week. Usually for small things. A tourist with a twisted ankle, someone who had gotten lost on a trail, a stranded hiker who needed directions. But sometimes the calls were more serious. In February, they rescued a snowboarder who had been buried in a small avalanche. In March, they helped find a group of ski tourers who had lost their way in fog. Each successful rescue built Celine's confidence. Each time she brought someone home safely, she felt a little more healed. Celine also started hiking in the mountains again, just for herself, not for filming or work, just to be there, to feel the cold air, to see the beauty, to remember why she had fallen in love with these places so many years ago. She climbed Winterhorn on a clear day in April. It took her 5 hours to reach the summit. When she got there, she sat down and looked at the view. Mountains stretched in every direction, white and blue and magnificent. Celine pulled out a photograph from her pocket. It was the picture of her and Marcus on the glacier. She had brought it with her. "Hi, Marcus," she said out loud. "I made it to the top." "I wish you were here to see this view. You always loved the mountains more than anyone I knew." She was quiet for a moment, just feeling the wind on her face. "I want you to know that I'm okay now. I'm not frozen anymore. I'm living again. And I'm trying to be the person you believed I could be. Brave, strong, kind, someone who helps others. She touched the photograph gently. I'll never forget you. I'll never stop missing you. But I'm not carrying guilt anymore. I'm carrying love. Love for you. Love for these mountains. Love for this life. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for teaching me to be brave. Rest well, my friend. Celine put the photograph back in her pocket. She sat on the summit for a long time, just being present, just being alive, just being grateful. When she finally descended, the sun was setting. The mountains glowed orange and purple. Celine walked down slowly, her heart full of peace. Back in the village, life continued. Celine still worked as a tour guide during the day, but now she also volunteered with the rescue team. She had found a balance, a new purpose, a new way to use her skills. In May, Celine received an email from a documentary production company. They had heard about her rescue of the tourists. They wanted to make a short film about it. They wanted to interview her and the tourists. They wanted to tell her story. Celine's first instinct was to say no. She did not want attention. She did not want fame. She just wanted to live quietly and help people. But then she thought about it more carefully. Maybe telling her story could help other people. People who were struggling with guilt or grief or fear. People who felt frozen in their pain. Maybe her story could show them that healing is possible, that courage is possible, that life goes on, and it can still be beautiful. Celine said yes to the documentary. The film crew came to Schneetal in June. They filmed Celine on the mountains. They interviewed the tourists she had saved. They talked to Peter and the rescue team. They asked Celine about Marcus and the accident and how she found the courage to go up the mountain in the storm. Celine answered their questions honestly. She did not hide her pain or her fear. She told the truth about her struggles, but she also told them about hope, about healing, about second chances. I thought my life was over after Marcus died, she said to the camera. I thought I would never be brave again. Never trust myself again. Never be able to work in the mountains again. But then 6 people needed help, and something inside me woke up. I realized that I had a choice. I could stay frozen in fear, or I could act. I could help. I could save lives. What would you say to someone who is struggling with guilt or trauma? The interviewer asked. Celine thought carefully before answering. I would say that healing is not linear. Some days are good. Some days are hard. That's normal. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. And when you're ready, even if you're still scared, take one step forward, then another. You don't have to be fearless to be brave. You just have to keep moving. The documentary was released 3 months later. It was called Frozen Redemption: One Woman's Journey from Trauma to Heroism. It was shown at film festivals and on television. People around the world watched it and were inspired by Celine's story. Celine received hundreds of emails from people thanking her, people who were dealing with their own trauma, people who had lost loved ones, people who felt stuck in their grief. They told her that her story gave them hope, that it showed them healing was possible. One email came from a woman in Canada. She wrote, My husband died in a climbing accident 5 years ago. Since then, I have not been able to go near mountains. They terrify me. But watching your documentary made me realize that avoiding my fear was not helping me heal. Last week, I hiked a small mountain near my house for the first time in 5 years. I cried at the summit, but they were healing tears. Thank you for showing me that it's possible to face our fears and survive. Reading that email made Celine cry. She had not realized that her story would touch so many people, that her pain and her healing could help others find their way through their own darkness. Marcus would have been proud, she thought. He always believed in helping people, in making the world a little better, in sharing stories that mattered. In October, a year after the storm rescue, the village held a memorial ceremony for all the people who had been saved by the rescue team that year. Celine stood with Peter and the other volunteers as the mayor talked about their service and dedication. But Celine was thinking about something else. She was thinking about how much had changed in 1 year, how she had gone from being frozen in fear to being alive again, how she had found a new purpose, how she had learned to forgive herself. After the ceremony, Celine walked to the mountain shelter. It was the same shelter where she had found the tourists a year ago. She had not been back since that night. The shelter looked peaceful in the autumn sunlight. The leaves on the nearby trees were turning gold and red. The mountain peaks were dusted with the first snow of the season. Celine went inside. The shelter was empty. Someone had left firewood stacked by the stove. The emergency supplies were restocked. Everything was ready for the next person who might need help. She sat on one of the wooden benches. This was where the tourists had been sitting when she arrived, cold and scared and desperate. This was where she had distributed emergency blankets and hot tea. This was where everything had changed. "Thank you," Celine said out loud, speaking to the shelter, to the mountain, to the universe. "Thank you for giving me the chance to be brave again. Thank you for showing me that I could save lives. Thank you for helping me heal." She sat there for a long time, remembering, not just the night of the rescue, but all the years before, all the adventures with Marcus, all the beautiful places they had seen together, all the documentaries they had made, all the laughter and friendship and joy. The pain of losing Marcus would never completely go away. But now, Celine could remember him with love instead of guilt, with gratitude instead of regret, with joy instead of sorrow. That evening, Celine did something she had not done in over a year. She took out one of her cameras, she checked the battery, she cleaned the lens, she went outside into the golden autumn light, and she started taking photographs again. Not for a documentary, not for a project, just for herself, because she loved it, because it made her happy, because it was part of who she was. She photographed the mountains at sunset. She photographed the old church with leaves falling around it. She photographed Frau Weber in her bakery, smiling as she pulled bread from the oven. She photographed children playing in the village square. Each photograph felt like a small miracle, a return to herself, a reclaiming of her passion. That night, Celine looked through the photographs on her camera. They were good. Not perfect, but good. Full of life and light and emotion. She thought about maybe someday doing another documentary. Not about dangerous animals or extreme locations, but about the rescue team, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, about how helping others helps us heal ourselves. It was just an idea. She did not need to decide now. She had time. She had her whole life ahead of her. Celine went to sleep that night feeling peaceful, feeling grateful, feeling whole. She dreamed of mountains covered in snow. But this time, Marcus was there with her, alive and laughing. They were taking photographs together just like old times. The dream did not make her sad. It made her happy. Because she knew that Marcus would always be with her, in her memories, in her heart, in the work she did. When she woke up, Celine smiled. Another day. Another chance to help people. Another chance to be brave. Another chance to live fully and love deeply and embrace this beautiful, difficult, precious life. She got out of bed and looked out the window at the mountains. They glowed in the morning light, solid and eternal and magnificent. "Good morning," she said to them. "I'm ready." And she was. 5 years after the storm rescue, Celine stood in a film festival in London, accepting an award for her documentary series, Mountain Heroes. The series told the stories of rescue volunteers around the world, including the team in Schneetal. She had spent 3 years making the series, traveling to mountains in different countries, filming rescues and interviewing volunteers and survivors. It was her best work yet. Critics called it powerful, moving, and essential viewing. But the real reward was not the award. The real reward was knowing that her work helped people understand the importance of mountain rescue. That it inspired people to volunteer. That it showed the courage of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. In her acceptance speech, Celine talked about Marcus, about how losing him had almost destroyed her, but also about how his memory had inspired her to keep going, to keep helping, to keep trying to make the world a little better. Trauma does not have to define us, she said to the audience. We can carry our pain and still move forward. We can honor those we've lost by living fully, by being brave, by helping others. That's what healing looks like. Not forgetting the past, but not being imprisoned by it either. After the ceremony, many people came to talk to Celine, young filmmakers who admired her work, survivors of trauma who thanked her for her honesty, rescue volunteers who wanted to share their stories. But the person who meant the most was Ingrid, Marcus's mother. She had flown from Norway to London for the ceremony. She hugged Celine tightly. Marcus would be so proud of you, Ingrid said. You have turned your pain into purpose. You have helped so many people. Thank you for keeping his memory alive in such a beautiful way. He'll always be part of my story, Celine said. The best part. That night, Celine stood on her hotel balcony, looking out at the London skyline. So much had changed since she left this city 5 years ago. She had changed. She had healed. She had found herself again. Tomorrow she would fly back to Schneetal, back to her small apartment above the bakery, back to her work with the rescue team, back to the mountains that had become her home. But tonight, she just stood in the cool London air and felt grateful. Grateful for second chances, grateful for healing, grateful for life. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Peter. We just got a call. Group of hikers lost on Winterhorn. Are you back tomorrow? We might need you. Celine smiled and typed back, I'll be there. See you tomorrow. She put her phone away and looked up at the stars. They were hard to see in the city lights, but she knew they were there. The same stars that shone over the mountains, the same stars she had photographed with Marcus so many years ago. I'm doing okay, Marcus, she whispered to the night sky. I'm living. I'm helping. I'm happy. Thank you for being part of my journey. Thank you for teaching me to be brave. I'll see you in the mountains. The wind blew softly across the balcony. For just a moment, Celine felt a presence. Warm, loving, proud. Then it was gone.
But the feeling stayed with her. The feeling that she was not alone, that she never had been. That love and memory and courage live on, even after loss. That healing is possible. That life is worth living. Celine went inside and packed her suitcase. Tomorrow she was going home, to the mountains, to her work, to her purpose. She was no longer the Ice Queen, frozen in fear and guilt. She was Celine Martin, nature photographer, documentary filmmaker, mountain rescue volunteer, survivor, helper, friend. She was brave, she was alive, she was free, and she was ready for whatever came next. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to hear what inspired you the most. And where in the world are you watching from? Let us know below.